Welcome back. Now, here's a very interesting story. As the Ebola outbreak slows in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, researchers developing vaccines are now going ahead to fast-forward human trials in West Africa, fearing they may never get to prove their products actually work. Meanwhile, in Davos, the man who discovered the virus warns it's a race against time.
Pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson is racing to move an experimental vaccine trial from small-scale safety testing in Britain to field trials in West Africa involving tens of thousands of volunteers.
Okay, that's it. There you go.
On Friday, January the 16th, one of 72 UK-based volunteers received the first dose of its new 2-injection vaccine. But Johnson & Johnson has received 100 million euros, that is $115 million US, from Europe's Innovative Medicines Initiative to speed development and push tests to the main Ebola-hit countries of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Scientists worry they may be too late to provide a vaccine for the current outbreak and too late to gather sufficient evidences to produce a vaccine for future epidemics.
The ultimate goal will be testing in an area where there is an Ebola outbreak, and only then will we have direct evidence as to whether the vaccine works. We can check blood tests here to look for immune responses, but actually you don't really know until you've actually shown prevention of disease. If the disease has gone away, that's going to be more challenging. Clearly, it will only be a good thing for West Africa if the disease is going away, and that would be great. But it will make these studies looking for direct evidence of whether the vaccine is working, that will make it more challenging.
2 other experimental vaccines have entered human testing, a product by GlaxoSmithKline and a rival by a tie-up between New Link Genetics and Merck. Both firms are aiming to start trials in Liberia at the end of January. Johnson & Johnson says it will launch its field trials in West Africa by April. Adrian Hill, the lead scientist working on GlaxoSmithKline's initial trials in the UK, said he hoped even incomplete data would be enough to win a license.
We will certainly have the vaccines that are being developed. The question is whether we will know with great confidence whether they work or not. The answer is we will have some data. The question really is, will we have enough data for you to be really confident and say, yes, this definitely works with X% efficacy, we've measured that. So I think there is a risk we won't get to that final answer, but we'll definitely get some data, and hopefully it'll be enough to license a vaccine.
Ebola discoverer Peter Payot said on Tuesday, January 20th, that it's a race against time as the pharmaceutical companies begin their vaccine trials.
Well, it's a race against time now. In order to find out whether a vaccine protects, the epidemic has to be active. But regardless of that, we will know whether it is really going to induce antibodies that are protective, whether it has side effects, so that, even with a waning epidemic, we will have far more information and ready for the next epidemic.
Last week, the UN said the outbreak of Ebola that has claimed more than 8,400 lives in West Africa appears to be slowing down, though the battle to contain the disease is not over. Payot said the international community must remain vigilant and ensure that the next outbreak will be contained.
Well, first of all, this will happen again. Epidemics are not something of the past. Secondly, we have to act early, promptly, and it's better to be accused of overreacting than not reacting. And never before had we seen 3 entire nations being affected by an Ebola epidemic. And so we need to organize ourselves much better, both in the countries that are most vulnerable, like particularly in Africa, but also in the international community, so that for the next epidemic we are ready and we can give the vaccines, the treatments, and act immediately.
The government of Liberia said on Thursday, January 15, that it will be free of the virus by the end of next month after success in curbing transmission.
Now, indeed, I promised you a show full of optimism, but there are some incidents which are taking place in our continent that I must tell you about. And if you think about it, as long as the good news I have for you outweighs the bad, we're still on course. That being said, security forces clashed with protesters in Kinshasa demonstrating against an election law reform that could see elections delayed beyond the year 2016. When some Kenyan school children ranging between the ages of 3 to 14 felt the need to protest against the apparent sale of their playground, that was fine. But when authorities in the country opted to use tear gas to disperse them, it was an abomination to say the least. Now, based on that, Kenyan authorities have apologized for that incident on Monday, which took place in the capital. The Internal Security Minister also met pupils on Tuesday to apologize and confirm that the play area belonged to the school. Activists had alleged that it had been corruptly sold to a private developer. The pupils, aged between 3 and 14, had returned to school after a 2-week teacher strike to find the playground fenced off. Many joined teachers and activists in trying to push down the barriers that had been erected before police arrived to confront them. Now, finally, on the program, and on a very optimistic note, experts across Africa say this could be an exciting year for the continent's economies, which may start to move out of their traditional roles and into new sectors. Now, in Johannesburg, that's Africa's economic capital for now, the VOA's Anita Powell reports on what may be in store for the year 2015 and beyond.
For as long as most economists can remember, African nations have provided the world with raw materials. Goods like oil, minerals, and agricultural products. But as 2015 dawns with oil prices plummeting, that may be changing. Those low prices may force some nations to diversify their offerings and cause investors to look to other opportunities. Experts gathered in Johannesburg, still the continent's economic hub, to discuss this new trend. Analyst Martin Davis says change is afoot.
Africa predominantly has been this commodity-driven economy where growth is aligned to commodity prices. We now see the headwinds of rapidly declining oil prices. What future does that hold out for continental growth, and what implications does that have for business? And I think arguably is Africa then sort of rebalancing away from traditional commodity-driven growth to one that is more balanced, more consumer-driven, and new wealth, new value being created beyond the simplistic business model of non-beneficiated raw materials.
That move away from commodities, says analyst Gareth Newham, could lead to less inequality, less corruption, and an overall better business environment.
And so there's a very close connection between good governance and the possibilities and opportunities for business going forward, and the opposite when there is not stability.
Davis predicts a geographic move as well.
So I think we're going to start to see the interest of business, the interest of capital move away from what's traditionally been oil-propelled economies in West Africa, think Nigeria, think Angola, amongst others, to more sort of East Africa, which is more resource poor, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania. Yes, Tanzania is going to be a natural gas story going forward as well, and also Mozambique.
Gas prices are expected to stay low for much of the year. For many consumers around the world, it's an opportunity to save money. But for African economies, it might be a chance to grow in new directions.
And that's where we draw the curtains on this episode of Network Africa. Many thanks for watching. As always, I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to send me an SMS via the number on your screen. Until next time, stay blessed and proudly African. I'm Cynthia Are. Bye for now.